Episode 9, Letting Go of the Fear of Abandonment. The fear of being left can keep you from truly showing up. Maybe you swallowed your truth, softened your voice, or tried to be someone you're not, just to hold on to love. But hiding doesn't protect us, it keeps us small. In this episode, we'll talk about how to release the fear of abandonment so you can live more authentically, freely, and fully. Recently, I learned a very hard lesson. Someone I love very deeply just walked out of my life. The greatest gift they could have given me was the exact thing that hurt me the most. This action brought profound clarity and awoke me to becoming a super empath. I am here today talking to you because of this exact moment in time created a fire inside of me to want to do more. You see, the reason they walked away wasn't because of anything wrong in our relationship. It was deep-seated in fear. The fear became so overwhelming it was easier to leave than to face it head-on. What if, by walking away, you ran from the exact thing that was sent here to heal you? It doesn't really matter the reason or the outcome for this matter. I'm not on this earth to make someone love me. If they want to run, you have to let them, for if you chase, they will just run some more. But if you let them and give them the space to do their own healing, and they come back to you after working on their own stuff, that is where the true magic happens. If they choose to run and not do the work, then you need to let them go and move on. The hardest thing I've ever had to do is walk away from the man I love because they chose to stay stuck in their pain. Abandonment is not rejection, it's redirection. When someone leaves our lives, it's easy to interpret it as rejection, as proof that we weren't enough. But what if, instead of rejection, we saw it as a redirection? Every ending clears a path for something more aligned. Sometimes, relationships or situations fall away because they served their purpose, and holding on would keep us from what's truly meant for us. When you reframe abandonment as redirection, you begin to trust that life is moving you towards a greater wholeness, not away from it. Fear does not protect you. It limits your ability to experience authentic connection. Fear of abandonment convinces us that if we play small, people will stay. But in reality, fear doesn't protect. It only keeps intimacy at arm's length. It stops you from expressing your needs, from showing your true self, and from experiencing the depths of the connection your soul craves. When you release the belief that fear keeps you safe, and you open yourself up to authentic relationships built on truth, not performance. True safety isn't found in others, it's cultivated within yourself. We often look for safety in other people's consistency, love, or approval. But the truth is, relying on external sources for security makes us fragile. Because people are human. They change, they come and go. The only lasting safety is the one you create within yourself. Through practices like self-trust, grounding, and inner nurturing, you build a sense of stability that no one can take away. That inner safety becomes an anchor no matter what happens outside of you. Trust that even if someone leaves, you're still whole and capable of thriving. Ultimate freedom comes when you know that loss doesn't define you. Even if someone walks away, it doesn't take pieces of your worth with them. You remain whole, you remain worthy, and you're absolutely capable of thriving beyond what feels unbearable in the moment. This trust allows you to enter relationships with openness rather than fear, because you know your survival, your joy, and your future are not dependent on anyone else's presence. Understanding the root. Childhood wounds and how the abandonment issue shapes adult fears. So often, fear of abandonment traces back to childhood experiences. Maybe it was a parent who left physically, or perhaps it was emotional neglect where your needs were overlooked. Even subtle inconsistencies like a caregiver being present sometimes and absent at others can plant seeds of insecurity. Those experiences shape the nervous system, teaches us to brace for loss before it even happens. Attachment theory: anxious, avoidant, and secure attachment styles. This fear also shows up in attachment theory. Anxious attachment often clings tightly, worried that love won't last. Avoidant attachment might push people away to avoid the pain of rejection. Both are rooted in fear of being left behind. A secure attachment, however, reflects the belief that love can be stable, reliable, and safe. Knowing which attachment style you lean towards is the first step to loosening fear's grip. The role of trauma bonding in reinforcing abandonment fears. Trauma bond occurs when cycles of affection and rejection get tangled together. You may crave closeness, but also brace for hurt. This creates a confusing mix of love and fear that makes it hard to walk away, even from unhealthy relationships. Trauma bonds strengthen the fear of abandonment because leaving feels like ripping away your only source of comfort, even if that comfort is inconsistent. Intergenerational patterns. How parental modeling passes down fear. Fear of abandonment can also run through families. If your parents or grandparents lived with their own wounds, those fears often pass down, sometimes through behaviors, sometimes through unspoken energy. For example, if a parent taught you that love must be earned, you may have learned to overextend yourself in relationships. Recognizing these inherited patterns allows you to break cycles to create new, healthier ones. How fear of abandonment shows up overthinking and what-if scenarios in relationships. This fear often leads to mental spirals. What if they don't text back? What if they leave me for someone else? These scenarios keep you trapped and hyper-vigilant, convinced that love is always one step away from disappearing. People-pleasing and self-betrayal to avoid rejection. You may notice yourself bending over backwards to keep others happy, saying yes when you mean no, or hiding your feelings. Deep down, the hope is that if you're perfect enough, no one will leave. But this comes at the cost of betraying your authentic self. Clinginess versus emotional withdrawal. Two sides of the same wound. Some people respond by holding on too tightly, while others shut down completely to avoid hurt. Both are defenses against abandonment. The clingy side fears being alone, while the withdrawn side says, if I don't get close, I can't be left. Both strategies keep intimacy from flowing naturally. Self-sabotage, pushing people away before they can leave. Sometimes fear makes us sabotage relationships. We might test people, pick fights, or create distance so that if they do leave, at least we can say it was on our terms. But what we're really doing is providing to ourselves that abandonment is inevitable, reinforcing the very fear we long to escape. The cycle of choosing unavailable partners. Fear of abandonment can also attract people who are emotionally unavailable. Subconsciously, this feels familiar. It repeats the original wound. So we find ourselves chasing love where it can't be fully given, reliving the old cycle in hopes of rewriting the ending, shifting the internal narrative. Learning to validate yourself instead of seeking constant reassurance. Healing begins when you turn inward. Instead of chasing reassurance from others, you learn to reassure yourself. I am enough. I am lovable. And I am safe. This self-validation takes the pressure off relationships to constantly prove your worth. Reframing abandonment as redirection, not rejection. When someone leaves, it's easy to view it as rejection. But what if it's actually redirection? Sometimes, endings clear space for relationships that are more aligned. Shifting your lens from I wasn't enough to life is moving me towards something better softens the sting of loss. Developing self-worth independent of external validation. True freedom comes when your value is not tied to who stays or leaves. You begin to see yourself as inherently worthy, with or without outside approval. This shift allows you to love freely without the constant fear that everything could be taken away. Building trust in yourself as a secure foundation. At the heart of letting go is building trust in yourself. Trust that you can handle endings. Trust that you can comfort yourself. And trust that you'll be okay no matter what. When you become your own secure base, abandonment loses its power. Healing practices, inner child work, and reparenting practices. Healing often begins with reconnecting to the child inside who felt abandoned. Through inner child meditations and affirmations and reparenting, you can give yourself the love and reassurance you needed back then. Nervous system regulation, calming fight or flight responses. Fear of abandonment isn't just emotional, it's psychological. Learning practices like breath work, EFT tapping, or grounding exercises help calm the nervous system so you don't spiral into panic when triggers arise. Journaling prompts for abandonment fears. Writing can uncover the beliefs fueling the fears. What do I fear will happen if I'm alone? Or what proof do I have that I am unlovable? Help you challenge old narratives and see yourself more clearly. Somatic release practices for stored grief or fear. Our bodies often store the pain of abandonment. Somatic practices, shaking, movement, or sound release, helps discharge the energy of fear and grief, allowing you to release what words alone cannot. Mindfulness and meditation to stay anchored in the present moment. Mindfulness brings you out of fear about the future and back into the safety of now. Through practice, like observing your breath or anchoring into sensations, you remind yourself that in this moment, you are safe. Relational healing. Communicating fears without blame or shame. Relationships thrive when fears are spoken, not hidden. Saying, "Sometimes I worry about being left, and I'm working on it." Open space for vulnerability without pushing blame onto your partner. Choosing partners who honor and respect your needs. A big part of healing is choosing relationships that are nurturing, not triggering. When you surround yourself with people who respect your boundaries and show consistency, your nervous system begins to learn what safety feels like. How to set boundaries that reduce fear rather than increase it. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doorways to safety. Setting them allows you to feel secure because you know you can advocate for yourself without losing love. Healthy boundaries actually reduce fear rather than feed it. Building emotional safety in relationships over time. Trust doesn't appear overnight. It's built through consistent action over time. When both partners show up with honesty, reliability, and empathy, safety grows naturally, softening the fear of being abandoned. Recognizing when it's projection versus reality. Sometimes fear whispers stories that aren't true. They're pulling away. They don't care anymore. Learning to pause and ask, "Is this real or am I projecting old fears?" helps you respond from clarity instead of panic. Spiritual and empowerment perspectives. Abandonment as a teacher, moving from fear to self-empowerment. Every fear carries wisdom. Abandonment can teach resilience, independence, and self-love if we're willing to listen. Instead of seeing it as only a wound, we can view it as a teacher, guiding us towards inner strength, learning radical self-love as an antidote to abandonment wounds. The deepest medicine for abandonment fear is self-love. When you fill your own cup with compassion, validation, and acceptance, you're no longer at the mercy of who stays or goes. The role of forgiveness for self and others. Forgiveness releases the chains of abandonment. Forgiving yourself for past mistakes and forgiving others, their absence clears space for healing. Forgiveness doesn't mean excusing harm. It means freeing yourself from carrying the pain. Trusting the universe. Life's flow instead of clinging to control. Fear of abandonment thrives on control. If I do everything right, maybe they'll stay. Letting go means trusting life's flow, knowing that whoever is meant to remain will, and whoever leaves makes space for your highest good. Turning pain into purpose, supporting others on the healing journey. Your healing story can become someone else's survival guide. By sharing your journey, teaching, or simply showing up with empathy, you turn pain into purpose and help others release the same fear. Signs you're letting go successfully. You start to feel safe in solitude, enjoying your own company without panic. One of the clearest signs that you're letting go of fear of abandonment is that your being alone no longer feels terrifying. Instead of rushing to fill silence or needing constant reassurance, you begin to genuinely enjoy your own company. Solitude becomes a space for creativity, rest, and connection to yourself, not a punishment or proof that you've been left behind. Triggers still come, but you respond with grounding instead of spiraling. Healing doesn't mean you'll never feel fear again. It means you meet fear differently. Triggers may still arise, but instead of spiraling into panic or self-sabotage, you lean on your tools. Maybe it's deep breathing, journaling, or simply pausing to remind yourself, I am safe. That shift from reacting impulsively to responding consciously is a powerful marker of growth. You begin to attract healthier, balanced relationships. As your inner world shifts, so does the energy you attract. Instead of chasing people who are unavailable or inconsistent, you'll find yourself drawn to relationships that feel mutual, steady, and supportive. You are no longer looking for someone to complete you. You're inviting in connections that reflect the wholeness you've already cultivated within yourself. You feel rooted in self-love, knowing that your worth does not change based on who stays or leaves. The deepest transformation comes when your sense of worth stops being tied to others' choices. You realize that whether someone stays or goes, your value is unshaken. You'll feel rooted in self-love, the kind of love that no one else can give or take away. From this place, abandonment loses its power, because you know one person who will never leave you is yourself. Letting go of the fear of abandonment doesn't mean you'll never feel fear again. Fear is a natural human emotion. It rises when we sense loss or change. The difference is that healing teaches you how to meet that fear with compassion instead of panic. Rather than letting it control your choices or relationships, you learn to anchor yourself in love, self-trust, and inner safety. This inner foundation gives you strength to face uncertainty without collapsing into old patterns. When you realize that you'll never abandon yourself, everything shifts. The part of you that once depended on others for reassurance starts to feel secure from within. You begin to naturally own your own needs, soothe your own fears, and offer yourself the stability you once searched for in external validation. And in doing so, you remove the pressure from your relationships because you no longer need others to constantly prove they'll never leave. You already know you're safe because your safety lives inside of you. From this place of wholeness, you can finally show up fully, authentically, and courageously. You stop hiding parts of yourself out of fear of rejection, and instead, you step into the relationship as the truest version of who you are. And when you live this way, love flows more freely. Connection deepens, and even if endings come, you know they don't define your worth. They simply become part of your story, a story you get to write with strength, resilience, and self-love at its core. Thank you so much for joining me today and walking through this very personal topic. If this episode resonates with you, I'd love for you to share it with a friend or loved one who might be going through their own transformation. Make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a future episode. And if you feel called to do so, leave a review. It helps this community grow and supports others in finding the guidance they need. Coming up in our next episode, Shadow Work for Self-Discovery. Until then, remember you are safe, you are loved, and you are never truly alone.